Glad to be here today. I'm gonna try to give you some value to start your week. So, can you see my screen, Carson?
Yep.
Cool. All righty. Appreciate everybody being with me on a Monday. Also appreciate you, taking your time to trust me that I'm actually going to teach you something valuable today for free because it made such a big difference in my business. And bear with us here. We'll be showing you some stuff. So this is a performance-based system, adds profits, minimizes headaches, and aligns the team. It's something you can do in your business by yourself. You don't need to buy anything to implement this. You don't need to do anything. Wow, is that John Malloy? Nice.
Hey, Chess, how are you?
Hey, great. How are you,
How
John?
you been, man?
Busy, buddy. Busy. Good to see you.
I love it. Great.
An old friend. That guy taught me a lot. Okay, so again, this is something I'm just going to show you how we did it. I'm going to show you how you can copy and paste it into your business. Essentially, we'll have some Q&A at the end. I'll try to be thorough, but also quick. So aligning incentives is a process that an organization's leaders define their vision for the future, and then they align the goals and objectives of the company with the pay for the employees, right? With the compensation structure. I'm going to show you how to do that at the field level today in your lawn and landscape business. You can do this in any service business where you're selling time, painting, gutters, window washing, power washing, concrete, whatever. I'm a lawn and landscape company up here in Michigan. So first, who am I? My name's Chester Baczynski, and I'll just tout a bunch of pictures of me with celebrities for a minute so you start to take me as serious. There's Megatron, right? The famous Hall of Fame wide receiver from the Detroit Lions. There's Brad Lee, who's a social media business guy. And if you're in the lawn and landscape industry, many of you probably know this fine gentleman. That's Jonathan Potoshnik. He was my mentor for many years and kind of continues to be. The lawn care millionaire. If you don't know who that is, just type it into YouTube and you'll find a ton of valuable information. This is a picture of our shop. There's obviously more buildings and stuff there now, but we run out of a 10-acre yard up here in Michigan. Probably a $7.5, $8 million company this year. I built it from scratch in my backyard and have come a long way. Now we're on the Inc. 5000 list 3 or 4 years straight. So we're kind of a quickly growing, well-run company up here that's doing really well. And I think I have some stuff I can share to save you some headaches. Picture of my team. During the month of October, we always donate money to breast cancer awareness. And so we get a custom run of pink clothing for our employees. So that's a little bit about me. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I was running my business when I kind of realized that this could help me. Okay. So I was doing it the hard way. At the time that I implemented this, I think we were doing like $4.5 million in revenue. We were doing well, certainly, but it was obviously hard and a lot of work. And the thing that I started to realize is that I had to scale my managers in accordance with employees. And at first you're like, wow, I got a manager. Now they manage all these problems and headaches that come out of my employees. And that was a big milestone. It is for everyone. I have a manager now or multiple managers. They can manage my people, manage the day-to-day for me. That's a big win. But then the realization comes, the next step is that, wow, I need more managers and more managers. And to be a manager, an operations manager, or project manager in lawn and landscape is a hard job. It's kind of like they're playing whack-a-mole between weather and call offs, and then the whole challenge of, even if you get to the point where you have a great field team and they show up every day and stuff's going pretty good, there's the challenge of keeping productivity up. It's like a whack-a-mole constantly. It's like 1 week labor's down, the next week labor's up. And it was very taxing on my managers. My operations managers were like, they're out driving around and they see a guy standing at a gas station on his cell phone on Snapchat or something. It just drove them mad because that guy's on the clock getting paid and he's ruining their numbers. He's not being productive. So it's a very stressful thing. It's like herding cats. I'm sure a lot of you can agree with that. In any business, it's with field staff is like herding cats sometimes, even if they mean well. That leads to frustration and burnout for your managers, which is bad. Because if you start turning over managers, then that's a more complicated hire than replacing a guy or a gal on a lawnmower to replace a middle manager who can understand budget and delegate and lead. And it's a tricky job, tricky role to fill. We can all agree. And that was my concern, is that this is a very taxing position in the company. It's really important. The other thing I noticed is there's no real leverage or economy of scale to employees. You have 5 employees, great. Now we sell more work. Now we need 10 employees. Great. Now we sell more work. We need 20 employees. You still are just scaling up, you're scaling up the headcount without really getting added economy of scale in labor. If an employee costs you $20 an hour, then 10 of them cost you $200 an hour. There's no price break on labor, right? So this is what we were doing. I made this image myself. I got the tug of war thing, and then I drew the little arrows next to it where you got managers and you got employees. And this is why, is because if you pay someone by the hour, then the slower they work, the more money they make. If you pay someone by the hour, the slower they work, the more money they make. If you pay someone by the hour, the slower they work, the less money you make. Right? If they go faster and you make more money, they make less money. Right? It's the age-old thing. Ask a hairdresser if you need a haircut, they'll always say yes. Right? Take a guest out to dinner, they'll always order steak. Right? Ask somebody to do one job in a day, it'll take them all day to do it. You're pulling apart from each other in the yoke, so to speak. And it's so blatantly obvious, yet so many employer relationships still just rely on, well, how long did it take? Okay, well, that's how much you get. In your head, you're going, why the hell did it take so long? Well, it took so long because they wanted to make more money. So it's really quite elementary when you look at the design I made there, okay? And so I started pondering. Again, I'm at 4 million, 4.5 million, got a pretty good thing going. And I start going, what lever can I pull to leverage my labor? Because there's no leverage right now. I had more employees, I spend more money. I had more employees, I hire more managers. They go out and chase employees around with that. Where's the leverage? Well, the leverage is in incentives. So I'll show you this quick chart. Alex Hormozy has been throwing this chart around. Really, the first place I heard about it was from Naval Ravikant. This is the 4 levels of leverage that any business person can have, okay? The first way you can have leverage is with capital. It's the bottom of the triangle. If you got money, you can use it you can leverage it into more money, right? You can buy a better piece of equipment, or you can buy real estate. You can leverage your financial position. Labor is the next layer of leverage. If I hire an employee, I'm leveraging my time. I'm getting twice as much done, presumably, in the same amount of time I used to get a certain set of things done. So labor is leverage. If I have 100 employees, I get more done than if I have 2, right? Further up on the chart is code. That's code leverage. That's like, oh, I wrote a piece of software. Now I can have thousands and thousands of people using it. It doesn't cost me any more money for them to use it. And so I have leverage. And finally, media leverage, which is generally the easiest example would be social media, right? I have like Lawn Care Millionaire I showed earlier in this video. He has hundreds of YouTube videos. He made them 20, well, maybe 10, 15 years ago, whatever. That media continues to drive business to his brand because it exists and it's valuable. And so he has media leverage. So I like to think about this pyramid and go, what can I do to maximize my leverage in these different areas? And labor is one that I mentioned earlier, is kind of a linear scaling thing. There's no economies of scale to labor. It just simply, the more you get, the more it costs you, right? And so I started playing with aligned incentive programs. Carson, is that you? Somebody's making a little chatter on here.
I think there's a little bit of an echo there, but
You watching YouTube over there?
no.
Better not be. This is better than YouTube. Okay. So I like to do this, and I think you all should ponder, how can I get more capital leverage in my business? How can I leverage my money? How can I leverage my time? How can I leverage my labor? How can I leverage my position? And leverage isn't a bad word, it's a good word, right? Give me a big enough lever, I'll move the earth, right? Who said that? Somebody famous. It's true. And you don't want to be in business. The reason you started a business is because it has leverage. It has more leverage than working at a job every day getting paid by the hour. So it would benefit you to try to find leverage in as many positions as possible. And that's the old thing. We all get the same 24 hours in a day, right? Well, people who spend their time on higher leverage activities accomplish more. So working in the labor column here, or the labor row, I decided, wow, what can I do to get leverage out of all this labor? And I thought, well, if they were aligned in the same direction as me, then we'd all be marching to the beat of the same drum and we'd do more. So here are some attempts I did. Over the years, I've tried it all. I've tried point system, bonus system, show up early and get a prize, over under, right? But project was budgeted for 100 hours, it took 90. Here's a bonus. I've gamified it. I've had scoreboards on the wall. I've had all kinds of different programs to try to capture all the stuff that I want to have happen and make it rewarding for the employee, right? I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to get their jobs done with a high degree of safety, first of all, I hope, right? I'm going to work safe. I'm going to work efficiently. I want to do a high quality job. I want to be nice to their coworkers. Want to take good care of the equipment. Want to be nice to the employee. Want to drive referrals. Like the list goes on. All the stuff you want a good employee to do. And how do you boil that down into 1 or 2 sentences and go, here's how I'm going to pay you for that, right? And so I tried all these bazillion different things, and they worked with varying degrees of success. But a lot of them were really complicated to explain and then really complicated to keep track of. And when it's complicated to keep track of and understand, the employee starts to think this whole point system is bogus, you know? If you're trying to keep track of who was late, who was early, what was your job costing, blah, 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 blah. It's like you need an astrophysicist to keep track of all that stuff at the end of the month to be like, here's $48, right? Just was a very heavy lift for the management side to keep track of it. So then I started reading a lot and educating myself on what's commonly referred to as P4P, or piece rate, or percentage pay, right? We refer to it as P4P. It means you pay your people a percentage of every dollar they bring into the business. And I talked a lot about roofers. Many of you know that roofers get paid by the square, right? So a roofing crew will come out to a job. I don't speak roofing, so pardon if it doesn't make sense, but let's say it's 10 square or whatever. And it's kind of like, I don't even know how big that is, right? But whatever, 10 square. Well, we don't care if this takes you guys a day or a week. As long as it's done right, you're getting paid 10 square for this thing. And so you can be as efficient or slow as you want to. And I also talked to haircut people. I met a guy who owns one of the biggest haircut chains in the US. It's started in Michigan. It's all over the US. He does like 90 million a year in revenue. And how does it work? When you go into the place and someone cuts your hair, they get a percentage of the haircut. And if they're standing around, not cutting hair, they're not making money. And he runs his whole national conglomerate like that. And the list goes on. Here's one more example as like automotive tech, right? You take your car to a dealership or a mechanic shop that you say it's a 2015 Ford F-150 and it needs brakes. What do? They go to the book and they say, a Ford F-150 2015 should be a 4-hour brake job. And they send it in the shop and the technician gets paid by the job. You get a 4-hour pay for this F-150. And if you're good at doing brakes on a 2015 F-150 and do it in an hour, you still get the 4, right? And so I started educating myself on that whole concept. And in 2023, last spring, we rolled out a P4P system to our mowing department that was doing approximately $2 million per year. And we reduced labor costs by 20%. And we reduced the psychological burden on management. Now, if there's a guy standing at a gas pump with a cell phone taking a picture of himself, so what? Great. Maybe I'll get in the picture with you. Because you're not getting paid to take pictures of yourself, so you can take as many as you want. So suddenly my management team was like, wow, this is easy. Let's hire more people. The guys made more money. So the other crazy thing about this, I'll show you how we did it, is that it's a win-win. It's like the employees make more and the company makes more. How is that possible? I'll show you. It paid our eager beavers more money. Because the folks, you all have some at your company, show up early, pack a lunch, they check their oil, they look over the truck, they load up, they go do their job all day, they come home, park, and leave. Right? They just do their job. Those folks ended up making a lot more money. The underperformers made less money. The guy who's working at half speed every Monday because he's hungover. Or the folks who just don't have the gumption to hurry up and get it done. They're milking the clock or whatever. They make less money on this system. Okay, so it rewards the top performers, it smokes out the low performers. It generated an ownership mentality and sharing of best practices. So now in my company, the top, it's public, who made what. And the top performers, people come to them and go, man, how are you so efficient? And they go, well, every morning we show up early and refill all the fuel in our 2-cycle equipment, right? Or we pack these extra, we coil up a thing of line trimmer string and stick it in our pocket. So when we're halfway across the property, we run out, we just refill it right there, right? Or we set our fuel cans here instead of here because it's easier to access. Or my passenger in the truck does the GPS while I drive. And so that we're always moving, we're always flying. And I have people now in my company that mow grass for a living, making 32, 33 bucks an hour. And at the same time, my labor costs went down because they're more efficient. There's trapped hours in the day that are not being captured. And when you start to pay people for that, they share their best practices, they take an ownership mentality, and it's, I'll tell you, I've been in business 10 years, lawn and landscape all day, every day. And I was in the industry working as an employee before that. And this is top 5 most eye-opening, impactful things I've ever done in our business. Top 5 for sure. So I'm going to show you the math on how to do it. The easiest place to do this is with recurring services, be it mowing, fur, you could do it with trimming. This is your recurring service type work is the easiest place to do this first. I'll warn you ahead of time. You want to have a consistent bidding process for this stuff. If your bids are squirrely and there's, well, we lose on some and we win on other jobs, it's a risky place to try to implement that. So I'd make sure that your bidding is pretty accurate before you go doing this. We were going to implement this into our install division, but due to some other shakeups in that division over the past 12 months, we've left it alone for now. We're going to roll it out in our landscape division in 2025. So let me say it again, the easiest place to do this, the most repeatable place to do this is like your mowing crews, okay? So the goal is to make your employees more money and reducing your percentage labor cost. I'll tell you right now, on average, I've implemented this for other companies, both in landscape, mowing, trimming, fur. We usually see about a 20% unlock on untapped productivity. So an easy way to think about that is if Deborah has a 5-day mowing week and she sends her people out cutting grass 5 days a week. Well, if you paid them per job, they basically get all the jobs done in 4. That's what we routinely see. They do 5 days worth of work in 4. Another way you could look at it is if I send them out for a 10-hour day, they're usually back in 8. So 10 to 15% is probably a safe assumption. Let me go deep on this for a minute. If you, let's say that your labor cost on your P&L is 40% for simple math. 20% of 40% is 8%, right? 1/5 of 40 is 8. So if you have a 40% labor cost and you told all your people, you followed this whole system and explained it thoroughly and put this thing out there and told your people, I'm going to pay you 32% of every dollar you produce, they would make about the same amount of money as they do now. Because they would be 20% faster just by knowing, wow, I'm getting paid by the job here. So you could cut your labor by 20% and they would make the same amount of money because they would be about 20% more efficient. Raise your hand if that doesn't make sense. I'll explain it again because I really want you to know what I'm talking about. Everybody good? Okay, cool. So that's why I say 10 to 15% would be a safe assumption. So same example, my labor cost is 40%. Hey guys, I'm going to pay you, and they don't need to know that it's 40% generally, because in their head, they're like, I'm $20 an hour or whatever. So if you say to yourself, my labor cost is 40%, I'm going to bring in the guys I'm going to offer, I'm going to say, you make 36% of everything you produce. That's a 10% reduction for you, right? It's a 10% savings. And they know I make 36% of everything I go do, 20% more efficient. They're going to make more money than they used to. And you're going to spend less money as a percentage. So what's going to happen? They're all going to get done earlier and they're going to be bugging you for more jobs. And so instead of billing 100,000 per head per year for your field employee on average, or whatever that number is, you're going to be able to bill 110 or 120. So you're going to be able to have a bigger company with less employees. Does that make sense? Your billings per head go up. So you have less people and they all make more money. Who likes the sound of having less employees and making more money? Right? Bingo. And I'm telling you, I did this. It works. We're scaling it. We're rolling it out everywhere. It's been going for over a year. So again, 10 to 15% may be a safe assumption. So if you go into your P&L and you take your labor percentage, you knock it down 10% or so, and then you roll out this system to your teams, they'll make more money, you'll make more money, and they'll be, the only complaint you'll be getting is, hey, we want more jobs to do. Because we used to work 50 hours a week and now we work 40. That's how it happens time and time again when I do this, okay?
I've got a question for you. Would you prefer me to hold it until the end?
If it's about this current section, then by all means ask.
Do you know what the costs associated with running this are, like on the back end? Like admin fees, I presume, maintaining it and the calculations and everything like that. And I presume it's totally different than your general like payroll hourly rate structure. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you, I don't have an easy answer for you, but I can tell you that it's less. It costs less administratively to do this than it would cost you to go chase them around and babysit them all day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we just do it with a spreadsheet. I mean, I do it on Excel, right? I have one manager who manages the whole thing. And so payroll takes a little bit longer to input, but once you get the hang of it, you're auditing your time clock anyway, right? You're auditing your dispatch board or whatever for, did the guys complete all their jobs? You're auditing your routes anyway. You're looking how much money they built. You're looking, everything you need to implement this, you're looking at all of those numbers already. So for us, we've been able to manage more people with less managers.
So you have one specific position that's designated towards managing this system then, correct?
Nope. well, he's designated to managing this system, but it's not his only job.
Okay.
I mean, it probably takes him 10 minutes a day.
Okay.
He manages the whole mowing department in my company. That's probably
Gotcha.
2.5 million now, 3 million. I don't know exactly.
And then how does he manage like callbacks, like that aspect of things, and how does that roll over to employees then too? Because does it fall on the employee if the quality isn't met and they have to go back? That still technically falls on them, correct?
Exactly. If you've got a callback on one of your sites, you're going back. And if you're paid by the job, you already got paid for that job. So I'm not paying you again to go back and redo. So it's hitting them right in the pocketbook.
Makes sense.
So let's say that they made $200 that day. Now you got to go back tomorrow morning because you had an issue, a service issue. You're not getting any more dollars on that day. You got bonused for that already. So now you're going to go back, and now your effective hourly wage is trickling down because you're spending time to go do something and there's no money tied to it. Does that make sense, Cole?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. I'll tell you, that was my biggest concern going into this thing. It was like, wow, the guys are just going to fly through all their work and leave messes everywhere. And I was surprised at how minimal the quality issues were, to be honest with you. We were pretty thorough about explaining, though, that if there's a quality issue, you got to go back, and it's not paying you anything to go back. So you might as well just do it right the first time. And it's been less of an issue than I thought it would be.
When you switched, did a lot of people fall off that didn't want to deal with a different pay structure?
No, so I'll show you how we implemented in a way that kind of got buy-in and made it. We did kind of like a zero risk trial for the employees. So nobody walked off when I explained it. I'll show you how that worked. So the other component of this on this slide is that there's a base wage, right? And you want the base wage to be as low as possible. So here the example would be like in our company, it's 16. You think $16 per hour, how could you? And I'm like, yeah, I agree. If I hung out a sign for $16 an hour, I would get 0 applicants, right? We all know that's like pretty low for what we're dealing with now. But if you remove, and that's because if someone in Cole's example has to go back to a job and redo it, I can't pay you $0 per hour. You just fall back down to your base wage of 16. So your bonus, it's drawing down your bonus. Okay. So here's an example. You make 35% of everything you produce. And we estimate, I'm just making up numbers to kind of give you the vibe of how this works. Really, I could show you the spreadsheet, but just to give you the idea, let's say I'd say, hey, Carson, you make 35% of everything you produce. But the bare minimum you can make is $16 an hour. So you're never going to have a moment in time where you're making less than $16 an hour. But if you're productive, my estimation is you'll really end up making $24 an hour. So I'm removing your ceiling. You can earn as much as humanly possible, but I'm also lowering your basement floor, meaning if you're inefficient, it's on you. So there's that gap there. And so then when you submit this to payroll, you're really saying this employee makes $16 an hour and they are bonused out this week. They're bonused out $500, which should be listed as the P4P bonus. You do that because you can't pay someone $0 an hour. And it ensures you, right? So the time they're driving between jobs, they're stopping at lunch, whatever, they're down to base wage of 16. But then the minute you go cut a job, let's say you cut a job and you make $20, well, poof, you're making an additional $20 that hour, which is getting stacked on top of your base wage. Deborah, is that a hand up?
Yes. My question is, we do mainly larger jobs like homeowners associations and commercial properties. And the bidding usually involves, so many man hours per visit. How do you adjust that and deal with your clients so that they're not expecting a crew to be there, all day, all the time, if they're able to get the work done in a section, quicker? How do you handle that?
We do a lot of commercial too. HOA, industrial, office parks. And so generally with us, it's like, if the property looks good and all of our requirements of the contract are being met, then, we're not selling you time necessarily. We're selling you a good looking property.
You don't build man hours into your bid, Chester?
Oh, I do. So let's say I got a commercial site and it's going to take 40 hours of cutting, and I want to make $50 an hour. Well, then I would say your job is $2,000 to cut. Right. And that's how I would present to the customer. And then you get into contracts by say, this is $2,000 per service. We have 30 cuts per year. So it's a $60,000 agreement. And then you have your bed care. Does that help at all, Deborah?
Yes, it does. I'm just, I know it's kind of a mind shift with the clients, because you get clients who are looking to see, crews out for a particular amount of time. But I can see if you say, well, we'll get through your property, the entire property in a month, and it'll look good, then they shouldn't care, how long the crew is actually on site. So yeah, I think it would be a change to the contracts as well, because typically, we'll put you get a crew, for 8 hours a day, twice a week, or whatever it is. So that's definitely a shift.
Got it. So you're in the contract, you're actually selling them 8 hours twice a week, or are you selling them a well-maintained property?
Well, it's been the time versus the look. So you're absolutely correct. Yeah.
What market are you in?
I'm sorry? What market? I'm in Tucson, Arizona, so we don't do any mowing. We've got one property that we mow. It's all maintenance, desert landscaping. So it's trimming and weeding and cleanup.
Yeah. I have some colleagues in Arizona that do a similar thing. They kind of maintain the rocks.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Cool. That's tricky. I mean, it's a static. The question I ask though is, if the guys are done in 6 hours, is the customer expect them to sit on the front porch for another 2?
They at this point, they expect them to move on to the next section.
I see. And so these are pretty massive sites.
Like condo communities, so the property may be cut into quarters, so quadrants, and so they work on a section each visit.
Okay, cool. So you're almost selling an on-site grounds team that'll keep the place up. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So I wonder if the conversation might go something like this, hey, Deborah, we noticed the guys were only here for 7 hours this week instead of 8. And you go, great. What we're trying to do, you first agree and acknowledge with the client, right? That's great. They're moving quickly. We implemented some new stuff in the business that we can, in order to keep your costs down, we can be more efficient. We're doing more with less. And that could be, right, we have a new pre-emergent that we mixed into our cans that'll reduce the reoccurrence of weeds, whatever. And then shift the conversation back. How does the property look? Oh, the property looks fine. I just noticed they were here. Okay, understood. If the property ever looks, if anything is amiss, you know how to get a hold of me. We'll be back out immediately. We're just getting more efficient with our crews, and we're adjusting our routes around a bit.
Yeah, and I agree, and my one concern is if they come back and say, well, if you can get it done in 6 hours, then I want to adjust the contract so that we're paying you for 6 hours on site instead of 8.
And then you could say, we actually, I mean, as you know, prices everywhere are going up, right? Tires, fuel, insurance, labor, like our costs are going up. But what we did is we implemented something where our crews can be more efficient. So we don't even need to raise your prices, We're not going to raise your prices. The property's going to look just as good. You just might see the guys, you're going to see the guys hustling a little more than you're used to. Cool. Yeah, just an idea. Great question and great compelling thing. I think you've got an untapped, I mean, that you have an untapped gold mine there. If you're just selling that flat hourly rate with no opportunity for added efficiency, I think you're sitting on a pretty good opportunity here with this. And that's why I'm generally not a fan of hourly service, T&M, right? It's a great insurance policy against a bad bid, but it gives you no upside. We're a flat bid. If you can hit it out of the park and beat your job hours, you're really making some margin. Landon, got a question for me?
No, I just kind of noticed. I noticed it sounded like it was hard to get through with that last one, and I just thought I just tried something like this, but I ended up having to pay the guy that I just hired more to come in and do a better job than the guy that I had before him. So really, we're paying our crews more. Like we are getting your property done quicker, but it's costing us more. Is that something that we could? Is that an easy? Is that a positive thing to relay to a customer? Well, our costs go up too. You know, we dropped your hours on site, but it does cost us more. We pay for better work to be done, and you're getting a better quality result, just less hours on the job.
I definitely love that. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
That's kind of what I've leaned toward. I haven't fully tried it out, but I mean, I lose money, you know, I spend money, whatever the case may be. So no, we can't change your contract because it's gonna cause us to not want to work with you in reality. So
yeah, usually a price increase always comes along with like, what's in it for me, right? What is the customer getting? So Deborah, instead of, you're not doing a price increase, you're doing hours reduction, and maybe it's a half an hour on 8, right? What is that? I don't know, 6 or 7% savings for you, a half an hour, and maybe they won't great. But if you align that with, well, yeah, great, glad you asked. We started background checking all of our employees. I don't know what you do now. We started background checking all of our employees, and we put GPS systems on our trucks to add a level of security so we always know where everybody is on your property. We added an extra $1 million in liability insurance for your security, and we're just a little fraction of the time we spend there. We're going to reduce it to get more efficient and keep you from having to pay a dime. Kind of an angle you may consider. Question for Bob Gaffner.
Hey guys, yeah, it's kind of it's off of that topic. Certainly, it may be on a future slide, but do you split the profits differently for like a team lead and for a laborer type of thing? I know you kept saying the 36, but then you never really broke that down from there.
Yep, we do. So I think now we are at 19 and 17, maybe 19% to the driver, 17% to the passenger, something like that. A little more work, but certainly rewards people for the added responsibility of running the crew.
Yeah, I built a 5-tiered system for implementing P4P. I haven't done it yet because we don't have, like you said, I don't have my bidding process locked in well enough to be comfortable with implementing it yet. We're a pretty new company. But yeah, I was doing like a 5-tier thing based on kind of experience and responsibility, but I just wasn't sure if that was the right way to go.
Mm-hmm. 5 sounds like it might be a little complicated for you to then keep track of. Oh, you know, Joe called off and now Dave's a level 4, but then back tomorrow he's back to a level 5, and then promote him, and now I got 3 level 3s. In my head, that might be a little more complicated than it needs to be. Just be aware of that as a watch out. Complexity is the enemy in business pretty much 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, across the board. Yep. Now I'm just kind of thinking, you know, entry level, and then, you know, the difference between an entry level helper and an experienced helper, and then you've got team leads that may be, you know, of different capabilities as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. In general, I'm a fan of that, of not having everybody's be the same. Okay, good discussion, by the way. Thanks, guys, for the questions. So math continued. I kind of already covered this. The number we see, and by the way, the 36% that I mentioned, don't just go in your business and think, well, if I have 36% labor costs, it'll work. You need to do this math for your company, okay? But the 20% cut in labor costs, I've seen it in the Southwest, the Northeast, the Pacific Northwest, and everywhere in between. I've seen that when people have a reason to go, they go about 20% faster. So here's another way to look at it. And I'm a spreadsheet type of person, but I didn't want to bore you guys with a whole bunch of spreadsheets, but I encourage you to slap your information into a spreadsheet or however you process information to do this. But generally, here's the deal. Daily revenue generated by their P4P rate equals employee pay, right? So if you generate $800 in a day and you make 25%, your pay is $250. Okay. So then what you can do is you can say, well, you made $250 today. If it took you 10 hours, you made $25 an hour. And this is how I found that the people in the field think dollars per hour. You could pay them $100 an hour and work them 1 hour a week. And at the end of the year, they make $5,000 and they would think, I make $100 an hour, right? So of course we don't want to do that, but the idea is it's good to always boil this back down to what you made per hour this week. That's what they like to see. So you take their jobs completed for the day, you multiply it by their rate, brings you their total rate for the day. Then you could divide by hours worked to show them, holy cow, Deborah, you made $29 an hour today. How were you so efficient? Let's talk, right? That's how this maths back out. What I'm going to tell you, do not skimp on the math portion of this. You really, if you get the math right and it's a win-win, the rest goes really easy. The questions, the trust that you get with your employees, all that stuff goes really easy if you put the work in on the front end. So work the numbers. You would want to know, how much does my average employee make per hour? Okay, well then if I paid them a percentage, how much would they make per hour then, right? You do not want people taking pay cuts here. You just want to squeeze some of the non-productive activities out of the company, which will happen on its own. So run it in the background. This was the next step we did is, we did at the beginning of the season, but like right now, you could start running it in the background and just say, okay, Carson worked 42 hours this week. He made $900. Well, if I had paid him whatever, if I paid him 35% of what he produced, what would he have made then? Like, would it be more? Would it be less? And then factor in that magic 10 to 20% increase and say, well, if I paid Carson this week based on the revenue, but he was 10% more efficient, what would he have made per hour? And I think of it in a spreadsheet way. So I get all my employees in a line on the spreadsheet and start seeing what would they make on this? And I run it in the background and get some practice on it. Then this is the big one. This is how we basically rolled this out to our team at the beginning of 2023. We took this whole system of how we're going to do it and we wrote on a single sheet of paper. And we printed the paper and we made a copy for everybody in the department. Obviously talked about the office, the managers, everybody knew what was going on well in advance. But then we brought in all the team leaders and team members, as we call them, everybody who's cutting grass, bought a bunch of bagels and coffee, sat them down, and we sat and gave them all this sheet of paper and explained to them what our plan was. And we showed them. And we laid out the time frame of how it was going to work. So we said, we're going to pay you a percentage of what you produce. Here's the time period here's the timeline of the checkpoints of when we're going to do certain things. And we had an open forum discussion with everyone. Let me go to this one. Listen more than you talk, okay? We let the crew do the math. So once I read through, we actually did a thing where everybody had the sheet of paper and I said, okay, Tom, read paragraph 2. Michael, read paragraph 3. And we went around and read it out loud as a group. And then I let them do the math. And this was a part that was kind of cool. I went, there's some egos in landscape, right? And I said, hey, Carson, how many lawns do you think you can cut a day? Oh, 25. And I said, wow, okay. And then somebody goes, man, I go, well, how about you, JJ? I could cut 28, right? Man, I cut 35 one day last year, right? We cut the whole Hunter's Chase condominium last year with 3 guys, right? People start tooting their horn, and I say, okay, get out your calculator, right? If you cut Hunter's Chase last year in 8 hours with 3 guys, and I pulled the revenue and said that job pays $2,200, what would your cut be? How much would you get for that at these percentages? And they play in with their calculators, and you teach them how to calculate it, right? If you cut 28 lawns last year, how long you think it'd take? 9 hours? No, 8 hours. Cool. Well, if our average lawn cut is whatever, $50, how much revenue would you make? How much would you have gotten paid for that? And they start going, wow. And everyone gets bought in and goes, man, I could have made a lot of money by doing that. And I go, yes, you sure could have. And so it's totally open forum for questions. And this is why in the previous slide, way back here, I said you should run it in the background beforehand. You should get so comfortable with this that you're like positive in the math. You're like, I'm positive that this is going to go well, or you're as close to positive as you could be. Because then when you roll this out to your team and they have questions, you already know the answer because you thought it through ahead of time. You do not want somebody from your team to go, well, what happens if it rains? What happens if we get a flat tire? And you're like, good question. I guess we'll just figure it out when it happens. They don't want that. They need to trust you, and you need to have thought it through thoroughly in advance. I can show you guys, I don't have it handy, but I can show you our one-pager of what we shared with our team. So then what we do, we did a 2-week rollout. And we had the meeting, everybody, I went look at them, removing the ceiling of what you can earn, essentially. And then we really sold it and pitched it. And then we do a 2-week rollout. So we go, hey, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to run on this program. We're going to run in the background. And at the end of the week, we pay weekly at our company. At the end of the week, we'll pay you whichever's more. If you make more on P4P, we'll pay you that. If you would have made more at your old hourly wage, we'll pay you that. It's a 0 risk test for you. So let's all see how efficient we can be. And if you can get into the bonus range on this stuff, I'll pay you every penny you deserve. And that's how we got the trust and the buy-in to try it out. It was a 0 risk trial. Everybody loves that. So if I go back a slide, because I put these out of order, this line here, go over the entire paycheck breakdown daily or weekly with every employee to show them how they performed. Okay. So that's what we did on payday. Hey, come into the office. Let's look at what you did. Wow, you kicked ass on Monday. Tuesday, there were some flaws. Why was Tuesday bad? Why were you inefficient on Tuesday? Oh, well, I was training that new guy in my group. Good. Okay. What can we do to train him more efficiently? Right? You start having those conversations with people and you're open. You sit down next to them at the desk, not across from them, right? Because that feels like I'm talking to my boss. You sit down next to them at the desk and go through their pay stub and say, here's how you did. You build trust by having open dialogue and answering their questions. And I know this sounds like a lot. I'm belaboring some of these points. It was not that hard. And I've been thinking about this for years and resisted it. And I ripped off the stinking Band-Aid, did something that I thought was going to be a big challenge. And it was like the greatest thing we've ever done. Really. It's been a complete culture change, management change, scalability change. It's been a freaking game changer, you guys. So here's some watch outs. If you think about doing this, here's some things to look out for that I kind of learned the hard way on some of these. One is long tenured, highly paid employees. Okay. Well, Tom's worked here for 8 years and he makes $26 an hour because every year he got a raise. Well, P4P is going to smoke out the fact that Tom's not any more efficient than anybody else. So it's going to be a lot harder for Tom to get to $26 an hour on P4P than Joey, who makes 19. So, and it's a tricky situation, right? Tenure means something. You're loyal. You're committed. You're consistent. But tenure doesn't mean you make the company any more money. So I hear it all the time, right? I got 20 years of experience. No, you have 1 year of experience 20 times. And you're not 20 times more productive than your counterpart. And so those are one of the employees that might get burned on this. They go, man, I made $26 an hour. Now with this thing, I make 24. And there was one employee we had that happen with that we had to make accommodations, and we kind of made him a trainer with some other ancillary duties around the shop that we needed anyway, that helped him preserve his pay. But that brings me to another watch out. Do not put yourself in a position where now you're cutting individual deals with people because, well, Joe's a rock star and he doesn't like P4P. You have got to present a united front, or pretty soon you're going to have one guy who makes 36%, one guy who makes 42, and one guy who makes 29. And now the whole system has defeated itself. The point is that everyone is compensated based on what they contribute to the organization. So I was hesitant to even tell you we cut a deal with one guy. We didn't change his percentage. We gave him some ancillary duties to help him make more money. But that is the employee. That is one type of employee here that this will be. There may be a little fudge with the numbers. Question, John?
Hey, Chess, I got a question. You said we're actually rolling this out August 1st.
Great.
And one of the questions I had, are you doing it with snow as well?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Not yet. Our snow business is not as sophisticated as yours, so we just pray that we get them all done. We don't. we don't have.
Yeah, that's been so to tell all these guys this we were going to start this off at the beginning of the year, and just like you, I've been scared to death to do this because it's a big change. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest changes we'll make in our whole company. And you're right, everything that you do recurring revenue is way easier to do than anything else. And it's even made us change our business model going forward. The one thing I can say is we've which wasn't that hard, is we're narrowing it down. Lawn care is easy because it's one guy and it's a different percentage. All our mowing crews have been 2-man crews. And what we found was you're going to figure out what properties you make money at and what you don't pretty easy. And we've gone through the last year and a half going through and changing all our rates and everything. But there are going to be a lot of instances going forward, a flat tire, the truck didn't, whatever. And you guys got to have that in place, just like Chester said. You got to know, you got to have all these, and there are going to be things that you're going to wing as you go along, because there's not a lot of companies that you can turn to and say, how are you guys doing it?
Mm-hmm. You're spot on. Yep. And I can be a resource for anybody here that's thinking about doing it or has questions about it or is running on it. You're spot on. And I can just encourage you, you're making the right move.
Yes.
This is the right move. You owe it to your employees. You owe it to yourself, right?
And basically we started it off with saying to the guys, listen, we want you to make more money and work less hours. How are we going to do that? And we had a lot of resistance the first couple, they were listening. My son presented it. And once we broke down some properties and said, you would have made this, they were like, oh, wow. Their eyes got big, and they're like, all right, we're not going to lose on this. And I'm like, you guys aren't going to lose, and we're going to make sure of it. You might have to make some adjustments on different properties or whatever, but you'll figure it out.
They will. They absolutely will, man. Congratulations. Good, wise choice. You're going to be glad you did it. I tell you what,
I was pretty stoked when I saw your thing on it, because I'm like, oh, good. It's good to hear another person's perspective when I saw your email.
Cool. Yeah, this is pro stuff. This isn't like, oh, I'm redesigning our logo to be more attractive. This is like pro level business system implementation. This is the real deal.
This is probably as strategic as changing softwares, I would definitely say. And I don't think, we're not 100% into it, but just like you said, you rip the Band-Aid off. I don't think it's going to be as difficult as we think. Going into the unknown is nervous. You think, am I going to lose all my employees? Is who's going to walk? Well, the good guys aren't going to walk. The bad guys are going to walk. The guys that they usually say, the guys that you think were the best performers, usually aren't.
Exactly. You're spot on, my friend. Congratulations.
Thank
you. Make an interesting point too that happened to us. Guys all of a sudden calling, this job's underbid. What the heck? And before it was like, oh, this job's underbid. Well, whatever, right? Chester's lost, company's lost. Now they're peeved about it.
Right.
They're calling out all your underbid jobs. Well, great. I'll change the price, right? Or
so
rebid it or whatever.
they actually can help you going forward with bidding properties and stuff, because they're, like you said, they're gonna see the efficiencies. Hey, we need to edge this bed around this tree, because it's gonna help us mow faster or weed whack faster. They're gonna start seeing all that stuff.
That's why it's called aligned, right? Now they're like, here, hey, if we got an extra edger on every truck, I could double up on this job and we'd fly, right?
Yep.
I never used to say that, right?
It's awesome. So sorry I took up so much time. I'm sorry, but
No, great share. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, question from Bob Gaffner.
Hey, are you could you get into those anomalies a little bit? How do you handle that? Rain days, flat tires, all that kind of stuff. That sounds like it could get tricky.
Sure, I can. Generally, it's a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, it's not completely systemized, but I will say this. Rain out, well, you can, if it's questionable, you can come back and park and finish your route the next day, or, you might end up working Saturday because of that. If you're sitting in the rain, generally, if you were hourly anyway, well, we want you to clock out, go to lunch or something. I'm not going to pay you to sit there and watch a storm pass at our company. Equipment failure, sometimes it sucks, right? You got a flat tire, it slowed you down. Did you inspect your equipment before you left the yard? Right? Because if you'd inspected your equipment, maybe you would have intercepted that before you got out on the job site. Usually it's a manager thing, but generally the flat tire thing, you're on base pay until we get it fixed, or you're down a mower, right? It's painful, isn't it? What can we do to avoid flat tires in the future?
So you do include the base pay into those considerations then. So that's the deal, right? So if they're down and they're waiting and they'll go down to base pay for that day maybe, and that's the situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're down to base pay because I can't pay you zero.
you win as a team, you lose as a team. That's how it goes.
Do you
You're
adjust
not
base?
gonna lose, but it's kind of a loss for everybody.
Again, I guess on that whole percentage thing, do you adjust base pay based on position?
Nope. Do not.
All right.
We don't adjust base pay, and I don't recommend it. You want to keep it as simple as possible. John's right. You win as a team, you lose as a team. And this is where the productive conversations happen, because before Bob gets a flat tire, Bob's bleeding money for 2 hours, right? Well, now the employees are also feeling that pain, and we can work as a team to reduce that in the future. Is there a patch kit on every truck? Do we blow the tires full of foam? Do we switch to wheels on the mowers? Let's tackle this as a team, right? Oh, the engine blew up. We didn't check the oil. Well, we'll just sit here on the hourly clock until a tow truck comes, right? I mean, no thanks. I don't want to run that business. Question from Deborah.
How do you account for crew members? Maybe you've got a 3-person crew and you have 2 crew members that work really well, but then you've got somebody else just kind of lagging behind on the crew, but you're not on site to know who's doing what.
Yeah, great question. Another byproduct of P4P. The underperformers, there's more accountability from their team that they need to pick it up. And it's kind and respectful, but it's like another complaint that comes to management more, get this guy off my crew. He always shows up 2 minutes before start time. I'm ready to roll. Or this guy lags or drags. That's definitely a part of it. There's more accountability, but then pretty soon you have a team full of all A players. Right. And before, the only person who was suffering from that slow member on the crew was you, Deborah, and you didn't even know it. Well, now the team suffers and they make you aware, and they ease your suffering by either training them up, moving them to a different position they're better suited for, or unfortunately removing them from the team. And a byproduct of this for us was a better training program. Now, new employee comes in, they get stuck with one specific trainer who goes out, trains them. We vet them a little more thoroughly. It's just forced us to get better at hiring. Short-term pain, long-term win. Michael, question?
I had a question on property checks. I'll tell you what I was thinking that we would do as they're going through, so obviously they don't get complacent to try and rush through things and skip items on like an HOA back fence that they don't have to touch every week, just things like that. Thinking, oh, this person is gonna call, because they never call. But we were thinking that we would look at their efficiency score per day on each property, and anyone that's, if they complete the property, 25% faster than what the budgeted hours are, that we would look at that property, maybe 3 properties a day, and have someone accountable for, you have 3 properties you have to look at, and does it match our quality achievement score, of our checklist? If it hits it and they complete it 50% faster, then that's what we want. But we just don't want them to do a 50% job. I was wondering how you handle property checks just to ensure that they're being done to that standard.
Yeah, great question. I can tell you, full transparency, we're not as good at it as I wish we were. Quality checks for us come and go. Sometimes we're on top of them. Sometimes somebody gets moved to a different priority and it slips for a while.
Right.
Yeah, I encourage you to do it. And as far as our commercial stuff goes, it's like we have an account manager who's spot checking quality and proposing enhancements at the same time. Yeah, it's a great practice. We've been growing and our org chart gets moved, and we as of now, I don't have somebody permanently in that role doing it, but if I did, if I could snap my fingers, I definitely would.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And I wouldn't get too overly, maybe I would, but to think, wow, they were too efficient. Maybe, I guess that's a great thing. If you can, if it doesn't require too much of your time to go, wow, they were too efficient, I'm going to go look. That'd be a good thing, but that sounds like a pretty complicated thing to consistently keep on top of. Just my gut, but if you can get it, by all means, get it. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, nicely done. So can everyone still see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So back to watch outs when you do this. Like I said, long tenured, highly paid employees, legal, overtime, and HR considerations. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an HR certified person in any way. Just pay attention to what the rules are in your state. But my rough understanding is that I ran it past our HR people. I ran it past a few people before I did it, but the system we run, I've seen done in many different states, and we help people implement this. Just make sure you have some kind of documentation that, yeah, it's fine. Base wage basically eliminates any concerns though, because you can't pay someone less than minimum wage, right? Well, what's minimum wage? $9 or $10 or whatever. What, they're at 16 base in our example, they're never going to be below. So that's one of our kind of stopgaps for making sure we're compliant. Low performers will hate this. The guys that just drug around and barely moved along all day will make less money. Just you should be jumping up and down when you realize that. Quality control, again, not as big of a issue as I thought it would be, but certainly something to be aware of. And maybe when you have that rollout meeting with your team, you could tell them, Michael, hey, and I'm not encouraging you to lie, but you could say, hey, we're spot checking 3 of your properties every single day. And if you don't get to them some days, you don't need to call everybody in and say, hey, we didn't spot check any of your properties today, right? As long as they think you're spot checking, that alone sometimes is enough of a thing for us to make sure that quality stays where we want it. I mean, I wouldn't use that as a long-term strategy, but it helps. And then this one I kind of touched on, but the miscellaneous complaints over route density, employee selection, there will be more conversations in the beginning. They got a money making job, or they go to that condo all day and get paid and we got to drive around, or whatever, you know, that happens. And that's where, or I got an employee on my passenger seat, he's a dud. That stuff comes up, but that's where a good emotionally intelligent manager can usually just work through it, right? Those are complaints, but they're not threats to your business, right? It can be worked out. Bob Gaffner, question?
I guess you're going to the base rate of 16. Did you pay overtime? Do you pay overtime? How does overtime work?
Absolutely, we pay overtime. Yep. But in P4P, the law in our state is that if you pay, no, an employee cannot make any less than they would make on minimum wage plus time and a half over 40. So our guys are they're making so much more money than that. It's not even a.
Okay, so you consider minimum wage plus time and a half as your minimum legal requirement, and then you're going to 16 plus overtime, and they're still getting higher than that on P4P.
Yes, almost. And I haven't looked at it in a while. I'm not fully in tune with this whole process on the daily at my company. But so last I looked, that's how it was. But base rate does not go to time and a half when they're over 40. That's the one error in what you said compared to what we do. So if you work 50 hours, you get $16 an hour times 50 plus your bonus dollars, which are routinely in the many hundreds for our employees.
Okay, so yeah, I got you. So you're adding, so everybody gets to 16, and then you're doing your P4P as a percentage above that 16. So you're 36%. Let's go to that number again. You would subtract the 16 from it. That'd be a bonus that goes above it. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Yep. And I can share you a spreadsheet with how we do it. And I hope I'm not putting my foot in my mouth. I can check with HR and send an email to this group if we need to. But last I knew, that was exactly how it was done. 16 base rate, bonus, and then if you're ever not in the bonus, the least you can make is 16, which is double, you know, what would be minimum wage in my state.
Yeah, if you could share a spread, I mean, if you're willing to share that stuff, I'd love all the information I could get. Like I said, I have something developed, but I don't feel comfortable with it. I'd like to double check it against some other ideas or somebody else's plan and just see if it looks right. And I'd like to implement it next year, starting off the season next year. But that'd be great.
I'm happy to look at it. Yeah, I've looked at a lot of these. And shame on me for not having 1,000% clarity on that, but I'm 99.99% sure. So good question. So these are our watchouts. And the last watchout is P4P being used as a bandage. If you say, you know, there are fires burning all the time, stuff's crazy, look, I've had some very squirrely, taxing, out of control phases of our growth in my company. So, and I'm kind of an entrepreneur type, kind of go fast, let the fires burn, fix it all later kind of person. So don't think you need to have a 20% profit margin and a flawlessly well-oiled machine to implement P4P. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you're just trying to bandage this up, if you're like, gosh, my guys don't listen to me and quality's a mess and I'm revolving door and I'm just going to do this P4P thing and fix them all, I don't think that's a good strategy. I think that building a kind of tightly managed, well-run company and then putting this over top is like going from good to great. I would use this to go from good to great, not from dumpster fire to decent. It's not a bandage. But I'm someone who has had massive dumpster fires. So my dumpster fire might be different than yours. I mean, if you're profitable and you got some good managers and your stuff's stable and you're running along, cruising along pretty good, P4P is probably going to be a great decision for you. And then this is my, second to last slide. If you're over $1 million in revenue, maybe if you're under, I don't know, give us a call, shoot us a text to this number, and I'll, Carson or myself will jump on a private call with you and help answer more of your specific questions about your situation. We also do implement this for people for a fee, where we do it all spreadsheets. We dig apart your P&L. We figure it all out. We figure out your percentages. We figure out your base rate. We teach it to you so you can teach it to your people. Also an option, but if you just want to get on a phone call and ask us a million questions, we'll answer them all for you. No problem at all. And then one other thing I'll just touch on briefly, we do have a peer group. We got about 45 people from around the United States in a private mastermind group. We got a massive library of content. There's companies in there, mostly in the $2, $3, $4 million range. Some people in the 5 million, some people sub 1 million, smaller businesses that are networking with people and, trying to grow their business. So it's kind of, people come from all walks. It's a good group. Like I said, massive library of content because we've been doing it for years. And if you're interested in joining that, go to our website. We'd love to have you. You could fill out an application, see if it'd be a good fit, and kind of supercharge your learning, because we do stuff like this. I mean, we do this all the time. Pretty much every week we're meeting privately and working as a team with our companies. And so there's that. It's called Green Industry Masterminds. And then lastly, Q&A. Any last questions? I got a few more minutes before my next meeting. I'd be happy to answer them. I think there's somebody in the chat too. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
Chester, I put a link to our school group in the chat. You can see a little bit more in the group. You can join right through there as well. And Chester, as we are doing the Q&A, can you go to the slide where it has my number in there, just in case somebody didn't memorize it?
Sure.
So all the crews that you guys are running right now with this this system, they're all one-man lawn care crews. You guys don't do it for anything else right now?
We have 2-man crews. We have 3-man crews. We have commercial. We have like 4 or 5-man commercial type crews. And then, yes, we haven't rolled that out in fertilization because it's so dang profitable. We don't need to. I mean, our labor costs in our FERT department is like 9%. We have a killer fertilization manager. And then
couldn't this lower that even more though, potentially?
It could. It's just for us, if we take our labor costs from 9 to 7, we just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Versus other projects we have going on in the business. Eventually we will. And as that scales, we only need about $1 million in FERT. So for us, there's other low-hanging fruit that takes priority right now than doing that. I think $1 million in FERT, 1% of $1 million is 10,000. So if you brought down, I guess there's some money there, 10 to 20,000 in savings. That's probably worth doing, but we got other stuff that we've been working on right now. But then landscape install crews is our next target for how we're going to plug this in, and that'll be probably this fall or next spring.
Have you done a lot of analyzing on how that's going to compare?
In what way?
I guess I presume you guys pay hourly right now, so have you analyzed how that's going to compare versus what you're doing hourly right now, and do you have any estimations on how that's going to change things?
I know it's going to save us a ton of money. Same way that it did with mowing. It's going to save us probably north of 100 grand, and it's going to be, again, the best thing that we've ever done for the division. And the guys are going to make more. That's the idea. That's the roadmap. Does that am I answering your question?
Well, it was a very broad answer. I guess I would like to know how, because we're mainly design and installation. We don't do much lawn care. So I'm just thinking about how this would work in that field. And I feel like it plays out a little bit differently because it's not just reoccurring things. It's kind of, it's kind of a whole different ball game with that, I feel like.
Sure. Yeah, it's absolutely more complicated. And there's a lot more variance in bidding with landscape projects, right? Underground obstructions, unexpected delays, right? Depending on the projects you're doing. So it's certainly a more complicated project to implement. I have done it. I have a friend we work with in Texas who does a couple million in install. and he runs all on P4P. And I'll tell you, it's just as valuable and just as powerful, if not more so, than it would be in a mowing division. It's also more complicated to implement.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like it would be more complicated to implement. Is that something where, because I'm seriously thinking about it, I just want to look at it from all angles. Is that something where I would be able to, I presume probably not, but see it from that perspective? I guess I would just like to see somebody who's done it for an extended period of time to actually see the pros and the cons of it rather than just jumping into it. But it sounds realistic if you can hit the nail on the head.
Totally realistic. He's been doing it for years. His
Yeah.
his install department runs like a Swiss watch. What is it you want to see?
What do I like? What would I want to see?
You said you want to see it. What do you want to see?
I guess I would just like to know more from his end. My biggest concerns are like the problems that come with it, right? So you've got more time going into, I guess there's pros and cons to each thing that gets eliminated and gets added on, right? So you've got like somebody who's complaining about whether it's the piece of equipment that they're operating or whatever it is as far as efficiency goes, and then you upgrade equipment, and that's great because then you have newer, better equipment, but then you have more costs on the back end, and then you have people who are complaining about the crew that they're paired up with, and so then you have to weed those people out and put more time into finding somebody else, and the pros and cons to that are like, will you get rid of that person that's relatively honestly dead weight, but then you have to put more time and energy into finding somebody else. So I feel like there's a lot of factors that I would want to like really sit down and think about that I haven't, because this is my first time even looking into it, honestly.
Well, do you want dead weight employee to stay at your company?
Of course not.
I'm saying, do you want a dead weight employee to stay at your company?
No, of course not.
Oh, okay. And would you want your employees to point out inefficiencies in your business to you so you don't have to find them all on yourself, or just leaks in your boat you don't know you have?
For sure. Yeah.
And you're willing to take the accountability that when that stuff comes up, you're going to address it?
For sure.
Well, I think that might be your answer, you know? The 20, I'm telling you, 20% increase productivity, I see it everywhere. All across the board, I see 20%. So it's certainly, I get what you're saying. There's some pain points involved, but 20% is like massive.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I think, how much revenue do you do, if you don't mind sharing?
Just over 7 figures.
Oh, great. Cool. And how many people are you running?
15.
Tell you right now, you should do it. You're just over 7 figures with 15 guys in install work. That means you're billing. What state are you in?
Minnesota.
Okay. They're only billing 66,000 per head. Routinely in install, you're billing 125,000 a head or whatever, right? So usually I hear of $1 million install business, I think, oh, they have about 8 employees, 10 employees.
Is that per head in the field or is that in general?
In general, probably. How many people are in the field?
12.
Okay, so 3 administrative. So if you said 1 million divided by 12, that'd be 80, I think. Yeah, 83.
It's
so
we're over 7. It's like 1 point, probably 3, I would say.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, then 1.3 divided by 12 is 108. Now we're looking better. If you divide it by the 15, 85, 86. Okay. Yeah, you're more in the pocket. You do snow in the winter?
Yeah.
Me too, buddy. I feel ya. I'd like to see that number a little higher, which means, let's say you're billing whatever I said, 85,000 a head. If you go times 1.2 and 20% productivity increase, you'd be at 102 per head. So that means you're 12. Presumably, it could be more like 1.5 million with your current work, with your current staff, your current team. So it's not for everyone, and it's not easy. but I think it is for most companies. I mean, I really can't fathom a situation where you wouldn't want to do it. And the juice is almost always worth the squeeze on this one. So good questions. Thank you.
Chester, we got a question here in the comments from Robin Freeman. How did you handle rolling out for one department and not the other? Maintenance versus install. Install department, did they get upset about not having the same opportunity to increase pay?
Yeah, it came up a little bit. In our company, we have division managers. So we have a division manager who runs the landscape division. Mowing manager runs the maintenance division. FERT manager runs the FERT division. They're in charge of everything in that division: hiring, firing, equipment, people, materials, yada, yada. And so they're almost like three separate companies. And that made it a little less, there was a little less of that because they don't really intermingle a whole lot. They don't commingle a whole heck of a lot at my company because it's like three separate businesses. But it has come up a little bit. Like, there's some days like, geez, I'd rather be mowing grass, So again, a good thing, ultimately. Certainly not something that would deter me from doing it. Now, it might get complicated if you have the setup where people are mowing grass 2 days a week and then they're rolling sod on Wednesday and fixing sprinklers on Friday. That would be complicated. So I encourage everyone on this call, if you have not, to try to get your people where they are performing the same task over and over again for the most part. And that's something you grow into. In the beginning, had a couple people doing everything. And then you grow to the point where they're more specialized. And we do have big commercial sites where the mowing crew will go cut it, pull the weeds, spray some Roundup in the parking lot, whatever. There is some of that still, because it makes sense at certain times, but generally it's good to specialize people. Good question.
Michael, did you have a question? Sorry, I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Chester, when you are rolling into the spring, when the mowing times just take longer, maybe you did it this year or didn't do it, but changing your percentages, knowing that, man, they might have to double cut this lawn versus in the summertime when it's, typically our times in the summer and the fall drop drastically. Just kind of keep the morale up a little bit. Just kind of your take on that.
Yep, I've done it that way for some companies where their rates surge in the spring, go down in the summer. We do have that phenomenon in my job times, but we don't change the percentages. Again, complicated. Well, this August it rained a whole bunch, so can we go back to the spring thing because the grass is growing? I don't even want to go there, right? I don't want there to be that level of customization. So no, we don't do that. Another byproduct of that I didn't know going into it is that what's our hardest time of year? Spring, right? April, May, June, or March, April, May, whatever. It's always the most trying, challenging time of the year for everybody in the company. It's hard. Well, people are more likely to stick it out through the tough when they know that on the back end, they're going to have the same percentage in the summer. They're going to be cutting the lawns in half the time and making a ton of money. So it's been a retention tool for us too, to leave it that way. I was just on another call and I was explaining to the guy, we do raises in June at my company. That's another tip I'll give you. And we do them once a year for everyone who's deserving, unless you have a position change. So if you get promoted, you get a raise, whatever. But the arbitrary raises for no reason on the hourly employees happen in June. And that is because you know how it is. Feels like every other day. Hey, can I get a raise? Hey, can I get 50 cents? Hey, this and that. And now we do all raises in June. Well, hey, I can get an extra pay raise? We do raises in June. Now everybody knows it, right? But the other benefit is that we do them at the end of June, effective on the first week of July. Now all my people have been on their best behavior through the most challenging time of the season. And the ones that stick through and crush it in the spring, they get a raise at the end of June. And now I've fully staffed myself with a cool retention play through the hardest of the year.
I like that.
How do you handle the raises with the P4P?
Knew that was going to come up. You don't get a raise if you're on P4P. You can be more efficient. We can get more jobs in a certain area because you're doing great work and people see it and call. And now you have a more dense route and you make more money. We can also do a price increase, right? So when our clients get a price increase, our guys get a pay increase. But there's no more raises. But they get a piece of every single positive thing we do in the company, right? We bought a more efficient machine. Boom, you're faster. Got more houses on the neighborhood. Boom, you're more efficient. And they get it. Cool. Any other questions?
Yep, we got a question from Bob Chester.
Cool. Yeah, guys, I like my Zoom screen is buried at the bottom of my taskbar and I can't get it up. I can't see anybody right now. It's driving me crazy. So I don't know where it went.
And you were talking about having folks be specialized. If you're at a point, we're under 500,000 second year company, growing quickly, but trying to put these things in place so as we do grow to 1 million in the next couple of years, we want to be rock solid. Have an operating system, have P4P in place, have office staff, be ahead of the game. So right now we're doing, the guys kind of go out and they do what they need to do. We're cutting bushes, they're laying mulch, they're mowing grass and all those types of things. But I guess, based on our profit margins, they're all going to be somewhat aligned, maybe a little more in mulch, but so, those types of things shouldn't stop it, right? I mean, we should be able to still implement it as long as they're doing just maintenance services in general around a yard and not, we're not doing installation or design or any of that kind of stuff, but
yeah,
that, I mean, we do chemicals. I'm doing chemicals this year, so I have that broke out completely separately than the mowing and maintenance services, but I had 2 profiles.
Cool. Yeah, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't. If you got the bandwidth, I wish I had done it sooner. I'll tell you that right now. One watch out for jobs with materials like mulch is make sure you're not bonusing them on the material. They should be bonused on their labor efficiency, right? So if you could see the breakdown of a mulch job, you might go, okay, we made $100, we had $30 worth of mulch and $30 worth of labor. Well, the crew shouldn't be bonused on the revenue generated by the product, because what really happens when you install mulch, if you're doing it right, you say, okay, customer, I'll buy this yard of mulch for 30 bucks. I'll sell it to you for 50 bucks. Again, just an example, don't copy the numbers, but this is the example to get the essence of the financial movement here. You buy a yard of mulch for 30, I'll sell it to you for 50, and then I'll charge you 50 to install it, right? So you have $50 in that example of material or product revenue, you have $50 of labor revenue. So I don't want to get wrapped around the axle, but keep that concept in mind when you're you're bonusing on jobs with materials. So let me give you an extreme example. Here's a $1,000 tree, okay? And it's going to take us an hour to plant. So $1,000 tree, I'll sell it to you for $1,500, and then I'll charge you $100 to install it. Okay, so it's $1,500 in product revenue and $100 in labor. Well, you're not going to give your guy 30% of that job, because 30% of that job would be $500 or whatever, right? So now you made $100 on $1,600. Do you follow that example? Did that hit for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, labor revenue only. That makes perfect sense.
Perfect. That's all I had to say then. You got it. That's exactly right.
Chester, we got another question or a hand raised from John.
Cool. Talk to me,
Justin.
Goose.
What do you, how are you handling vacation and holiday pay?
Our guys get paid vacations, they get paid holidays, and they are paid out at base wage.
Okay,
So they get a lot of them.
yep,
I could see it being a gripe, maybe. Hasn't been a huge gripe for us.
what we planned on doing was, given vacation, and we were gonna offer like 2 more days of, paid time off just because of the pay rate, the pay rate change.
Sure. Yeah. The P4P should be so valuable to them that it overshadows, any other real complaints they can have, You want to go back down to your old thing, so, but I'm a big fan of that. I'm a fan of holidays and PTO, and I think it's nice. And I think it's kind of a rarity in our industry at a lot of companies. So we tout that. We got 10 paid holidays, right?
Yeah. Well, plus the other thing is you can, now when you're advertising for positions, you can say that you can make up to $32 an hour. You're not putting in there that you're paying somebody $18 an hour, to start.
You're absolutely right. Yep. Our top techs make 2,000 per week or whatever, right? You could say that when you're hiring material.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, I must have missed that there. What do you pay on holidays? Are you paying the base rate on holidays? Is that how that works? Or? Yeah.
Yep. Great question.
Okay, what else we got?
Yeah, I got about 5 more minutes and then I got to go attend to another meeting. Cool. Any last questions? And Carson put, if you guys are interested in our peer group, like I mentioned, it's in the chat. Jump in there and see what we're all about. Our general vision is if you're driven and enthusiastic and you want to learn and you're passionate about your business, then we'd love to talk with you and see if you'd be a good fit for it. It's a powerful group. I started it. Carson really started it. I started it too because I was in a peer group and it was so impactful for my career, and it shortcutted so many years and years and years of trial and error by doing that. And it was dissolved. The peer group ended and kind of shut down. And I thought, golly, I'd love to carry that torch forward. So we got a peer group going. It's a good thing. We'd love to have you. If you want to digest this, you think about it, you go, wow, I just thought of 5 more questions I have and I forgot to ask them or whatever. Text us so we know who you are. Text P4P, that phone number on there, and we'll happily jump on a 2-on-1 call, Carson, myself, and you, to answer questions. You can bounce stuff off us, whatever. We'd happy to help you. There's peer group Q&A. All righty, y'all. That was fun.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. We'll see you at the
Thank you,
next one.
guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. It was great. Thanks.
Joy.
Thank you.
Have a great day. See ya.
too.
Yeah.